So next up is Marisa Bruno from the Hillcountryalliance, and she's going to give additional resources and tools that'll help you implement conservation and conservation within your organizations.
Thank you, Shay. Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Yeah. Y'all know, I guess we're showing hands. Who knows Hillcountryalliance? Okay, enough that I got to do my spiel. I'm Marisa Bruno. I'm the Water Program Manager at the Hillcountryalliance. I'm here to talk about some solutions and resources. I recognize a lot of faces in this room, folks like Blake and Michael. I think people probably already know a lot of this, but maybe there's a little bit that you'll get. Go to the next slide. So the Hill Country Alliance, we're a regional nonprofit. We cover 17 counties in the Hill Country. And that gives us a sort of unique vantage point of seeing what's happening across the counties and who's doing what are some great solutions on the ground, and what are all the resources. Actually, I'm just gonna stand here because I got like 30 slides. I'm gonna go through them really fast. We work on land, night skies, water, and community conservation and preservation. We cover a lot of territory, but what we do across all of these different sort of program areas is pretty similar. So we produce resources like the ones that you'll have up front. We do a leadership institute, so for any elected officials in the room, we have a leadership institute that meets monthly, and it's for folks from across the Hill Country to get together and sort of think through the challenge of growing sustainably as a region. We have a lot of events like this one, our leadership summit, grassroots gatherings, etc. And we love to highlight what folks are doing across the region. Okay. So we have a really big challenge in the whole country. Y'all already know this. We have explosive growth, among the fastest in the nation. We have more intense droughts. As we heard many times today, the higher temperatures makes it harder to recover. And we are seeing the effects on the ground. Our rivers are running dry. I don't know if y'all remember 2 years ago, Campwood ran out of water, Comcan ran out of water. These are some really serious issues. And what we need, like Jacob said, is to stretch our water and make it go further. Full disclosure, my background is in technology and in the business world. And I think that we need to be building differently than we have in the last 100 years and really leveraging new technologies that are available. The sort of shift that we envision for the Hill Country is a shift towards a one water approach to water management, which I heard you mention earlier today, one water buildings. And one water is essentially, well, I like to think about one water by first saying what we normally do when we manage our resources is we have a drinking water department, a wastewater department, and they're thinking about water in silos. So drinking water, we're thinking about where do we get our supply and how do we treat it. We're thinking about wastewater is what do we do with this end product and how do we get rid of it. And then stormwater is managed by a totally different system as well. And so one water is about communicating and integrating these water resources and thinking about them as one system to make our supply go further. It's a fancy term for integrated water resource management. I don't know how well that rebrand has worked, but one water is what we're calling it now. I want to make a little plug for rainwater harvesting and AC condensate capture. Robert Mace is I guess who knows Robert Mace in this room? Probably more folks in the Hill Country Alliance. Okay. So he's about to produce a report that looks at how much rainwater we can reliably harvest based on where you are in Texas. And the sort of too long don't read from that is that there's a lot of potential in rainwater harvesting at the single family home level. And so it's a serious water supply consideration. Similarly with AC condensate capture, he does this sort of how much based on humidity in your region can you expect to capture from AC condensate, and again, it's really a lot of water. And so we should be thinking about both of these technologies. Some of these are ancient like cisterns and rainwater harvesting as a new potential supply. Okay, so now we're talking about solutions and then we'll get into resources. How are our communities responding or implementing one water on the ground? The first is through large infrastructure investments. And again, folks like in the city of Colorado will know a lot about this already, but I'll highlight a few examples you might not know about. In Bandera, they have to move their wastewater treatment plant. They're using that as an opportunity to upgrade their system upgrade their standards and install reuse to irrigate their city parks, and they're considering ASR for indirect potable reuse. Marble Falls and Liberty Hill are moving forward with direct potable reuse, which I think is happening a lot quicker than folks thought it would. And then in Austin, I think folks are familiar with their ASR project. We also see a ton of OneWater buildings. The Blue Hole Primary School has gotten a ton of press for doing AC condensate capture, rainwater harvesting, and on-site wastewater reuse. They're projected to eventually, during normal times, reduce their demand on the aquifer by 90%. And it also saves money, almost $1 million over 30 years. So this is just good financial sense. And then in Kirk County, I've been learning they've got like 4 or 5 OneWater buildings that we never talk about, including a youth event center. And they're using, again, rainwater and AC condensate to flush toilets and do all sorts of things like dust control. I really think this is how we need to be building for in the future. There's also a lot of new ordinances being rolled out. I think folks are feeling like incentives are just not enough anymore. San Marcos has some really interesting landscaping restrictions. They are restricting all new turf to 50% for single-family homes of the total landscape area and 25% in commercial builds. They also have 2 separate meters for irrigation versus household use. I think that's really smart. It sets you up for separate pricing down the road, because as Shay said, landscape irrigation accounts for so much of our potable demand. Austin is requiring that in all new buildings, 250,000 square feet and bigger, you must implement on-site reclaimed water or reuse water. And then in Wimberley, it's been a requirement since 2009. If you're a developer and you're for any new subdivision with single-family homes, one of the design options you present must include a rainwater harvesting feature. So at that point, you're presenting homes with a bill that has rainwater harvesting, and it's on them to decline that option. So there's a lot of opportunities and ordinances. And then the last thing we're seeing, and this is somewhat nascent, is a shift towards not just water conservation messaging, but value of water messaging. And the idea here is that, and while I agree with the gentleman, there's a lot that homeowners can be doing. A lot of the sort of water supply challenges we're seeing in hill country are going to be overcome, not by folks taking shorter showers, but by some sort of large-scale infrastructure investments. And so we need constituents and residents on board to support these sorts of investments. So maybe more larger public bonds so that we can fund rainwater harvesting. Okay, so those are what we're seeing. Now, what are the resources to pull this off? I want to make a big plug for the state revolving fund. If you're a city and you have any sort of leaky pipe, this is a really good year to start preparing your application. There's more money than ever has been in the state revolving fund coming up for this next cycle of applications. And what we're hearing on the ground is that there will be points awarded for any sort of water conservation project. So if you have an infrastructure need, this is a really good time to be applying for funding. There are a lot of technical assistance providers out there. One thing that HCA does with communities is we offer to connect you all with TA providers. And so if you need help grant writing, looking for funding sources, please reach out. We're happy to connect you with folks that can help do that. I will sort of mention a lot of the grant opportunities are only for disadvantaged communities. But if you do have within your district a sort of community that qualifies, there's a lot of grant funding on the table. And if not, it's pretty much the best loan package you can get. On the OneWater side, HCA has a OneWater guidebook that contains a list of engineers that can build these sorts of buildings, as well as case studies. That's been out for a little while now, and it's great if you have a project you want to get going. The Net Zero Water Toolkit is quite a new resource, and that's really exciting. It covers some gaps from our guidebook that we produced. It looks at what are the permitting hurdles when you're doing something like a OneWater building, what does that pathway look like? And it also talks a lot about financing, which can be a challenge. And it's easy enough to say all new buildings should have rainwater harvesting, but it is expensive. And so how do you finance something like that? And it has options at the individual building level, like PACE, which was formerly for building redevelopment. Now it can be used for greenfield development. Lone Star, and then all sorts of acronyms and alphabet soups that honestly are beyond my pay grade, but TERSs and PIDs and MUDs and WCIDs. Here, what I can offer is that Texas Water Trade, the group that publishes Toolkit, we're helping them set up workshops in Hays and Travis counties. And so if you're interested in having a conversation about water buildings, how you permit them, how you finance them, please reach out and we'd be happy to set up a workshop with new home developers and new commercial developers. And then the last thing I'll mention is we have a water resolution that has been passed in City of Bernie, City of Fredericksburg, most recently Wimberley, and next week will be up for a vote in the city of Wood Creek. This resolution basically directs city staff to look for opportunities to implement water with every new publicly funded building. And with that sort of passing of the water resolution, HCA can offer sort of brown bag lunches to talk about what that looks like and languages for your RFQ. On the ordinance front, we have a really great guidebook called Leading by Example. It has model ordinances. So all of the ordinances I talked about as solutions, those are available on our Leading by Example guidebook. It covers all sorts of different water sections and has examples from across the region. There's another great resource that goes beyond what we're seeing in the Hill Country, and the Hill Country is not necessarily leading the path on all of these issues. And so the Sustainable Development Code is a national look at sustainable development. And then on the HOA front, we're producing a guide that will be out later this year that has model HOA language with a kind of step-by-step guide for HOAs to update their landscaping guidelines. So how do we sort of transition from a turf grass HOA situation into more native landscaping? And we use the term native landscaping a lot because we think sometimes terms like xeriscaping freak people out. They think they're gonna look like Sonoran desert rockscapes, and that's not what it needs to look like. It can look beautiful and green. And then the last resource I'll offer is HCA has been helping to roll out the Texas Runs on Water campaign in a few communities. We just revealed this new mural and curl that celebrates the connection to the Guadalupe River in the city. And we can help provide match funding. So if you have a local group that you're working with that wants to do some sort of community project around water, and you're willing to help us raise the 50% match funding, we can help do projects like this. Just sort of ran through all of those resources. I'll say one more resource, which is that I know some of this stuff goes beyond what any city or permittee can do, and it's going to require regulatory change. A recent thing I heard about was on the rainwater harvesting front, you have to treat it to surface water standards, which is really expensive when it's a really clean water supply source. So what would it look like to have TCEQ updated standards so that rainwater can be treated more like groundwater? That would make the whole implementation of rainwater harvesting easier. So these sorts of regulatory opportunities are really big. We are not super involved with the state legislature, but we have many partners who are. And so if you have any policy ideas for things that you think just gotta change in order to lead us into a more water sustainable future, please don't hesitate to reach out and share those ideas. Okay, that's it.